Let's say you know exactly how to compare two groups using a simple t-test. Honestly, it's a fantastic tool. But what happens when you need to compare 3 different diet plans at the exact same time? Or, say, 5 different soil treatments for a crop? Do you just run a bunch of separate t-tests? Well, the short answer is absolutely not, and doing so will actually completely break your statistical results.
So, a super common question students ask right about now is, why can't we just run multiple t-tests for 3 or more groups, test A versus B, then B versus C, then A versus C? The reason is that running all those multiple pairwise tests drastically increases the likelihood of making a type 1 error. Think of it this way, every single time you run a test, there's a chance of a false positive. Stack those tests up, and your overall error rate just skyrockets. This is the exact problem that the English statistician Sir Ronald Fisher solved with what we now call the F-distribution and the analysis of variance.
By the end of this explainer, you're going to completely master the core concept behind this test. We'll unroll the formula step by step, so it's no longer some intimidating mystery. And you'll learn exactly how to apply the F-ratio to real-world data. You're going to know how to analyze differences across multiple groups simultaneously, all without ruining your error rate.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap. We'll cover the F-ratio concept, unroll the math, break down the ANOVA table, walk through some real-world examples, and then wrap up with a summary.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the F-ratio concept.
Before we get completely lost in a sea of formulas, we really need to understand what the F-statistic actually is. At its absolute simplest, it's just a ratio. It's a fraction with a numerator and a denominator, and this brilliantly illustrates what that fraction represents: signal versus noise. To calculate the F-ratio, we are basically estimating the variance in 2 completely different ways. The numerator is the variance between samples. This is our signal. It's the actual effect of the treatment, the variation we can explain. The denominator is the variance within samples, and this is our noise. It's just the random, unexplained differences among individuals inside the exact same group, purely due to chance. Basically, the F-ratio is literally asking, how loud is the signal compared to the background noise? Let's do a quick mental check right here to make sure this is tracking. You might be wondering, what if the null hypothesis is actually true? What if all these groups really have the exact same normal distribution and our treatment doesn't do anything at all? Think about our fraction for a second. What happens to that signal-to-noise ratio? The answer is 1. If the null hypothesis is true, there is literally no real treatment effect. Therefore, both the numerator and the denominator are just estimating the exact same underlying population variance. The signal equals the noise. And, as we know, any number divided by itself is 1, making the F-ratio approximately equal to 1. Only tiny, random sampling errors would make it deviate slightly from that.
Moving right along to Section 2, unrolling the math.
Now that we understand the whole concept of the ratio, how do we actually turn raw, messy data into that fraction? We just follow these 4 steps. First, we calculate the sum of squares, or SS. This just means adding together squared quantities to find the total variation, the variation between groups, and the variation within groups. Second, we find our degrees of freedom. Let's go ahead and call the number of groups k and the total sample size n. The degrees of freedom for the numerator is k minus 1. For the denominator, it's n minus k. Third, we simply divide our sum of squares by our degrees of freedom to get what's called mean squares, or MS. This gives us MS between and MS within. Finally, step 4, we divide MS between by MS within, and boom, we have our F-ratio.
Wait, hold on. This is super important and a really common place people get tripped up. Before we organize all this data, try to visualize the shape of the F-distribution curve based on the math we just went through. If the F-ratio is based on variances, which are literally squared numbers, which tail does the one-way ANOVA test actually use? Left, right, or two-tailed?
It is always right-tailed, no exceptions. Because variances are calculated using squared values, they are always positive. Think about it. You can't have negative noise. So if the null hypothesis is false and the treatment actually works, the variance between will generally be much larger than the variance within. This pushes our F-ratio to be larger than 1, driving the value way out into the right tail of the curve. There are simply no negative values on an F-distribution.
All right, Section 3, the ANOVA table.
Listen, if you try to calculate all of those sums of squares on a blank piece of scratch paper, you are going to get completely lost. So, statisticians use this incredibly standard structure to keep everything perfectly organized. Notice how it reads logically from left to right. We list our sources of variation on the far left, the factor, which is the between-group signal, and the error, which is the within-groups noise. Then we place our sums of squares in the first column and degrees of freedom in the next. To get the mean square, we simply read straight across the row and divide. SS divided by DF equals MS. Finally, to get our F statistic on the far right, we just divide the top MS by the bottom MS. Signal divided by noise. It's essentially a perfectly logical, self-solving grid.
Let's see this in action in Section 4, Real-World Examples.
Let's make this a whole lot easier by applying it to a practical, real-world example. Take a look at this raw data. We're testing 3 totally different diet plans to see their effect on mean weight loss. Plan 1 has 4 people in it. Plans 2 and 3 have 3 people each. This gives us a total sample size, our overall N, of 10. And our total number of groups, our K, is 3. Notice a really cool feature here. The sample sizes don't even have to be equal for ANOVA to work perfectly.
And here is all that raw data neatly plugged into our ANOVA table. Let's look at the error row first. Our error variance, remember that's the random background noise, has a mean square of 2.9792. Now check out the factor row. Our signal, the actual calculated effect of the diet plans, has a mean square of only 1.1229. Do you see the issue? The noise is actually louder than the signal. So when we do the math and divide our signal by our noise, we end up with a tiny F ratio of just 0.3769. Since this is way less than 1, it's nowhere near the critical region, way out in our right tail. So the evidence tells us straight up, these diet plans do not have significantly different results.
Now, you might be wondering at this point, okay, clearly it works for 3 groups, but can this mathematical tool handle even more groups? Like, what if an experiment is much, much larger?
Oh, absolutely it can. Consider this experiment done by students at Marist College. They wanted to test how different soil covers actually affected the weight of the tomatoes they were growing. They didn't just test 3 covers. They went ahead and tested 5: bare soil, commercial cover, black plastic, straw, and compost. 15 plants in total. The One-Way ANOVA seamlessly scales to 5 groups. You don't even have to learn a new formula. You simply update your degrees of freedom so your K equals 5, and the ANOVA table just automatically handles the rest. It's incredibly elegant.
Finally, let's bring it all together in Section 5, Summary.
Before we finish up, let's just rapid-fire summarize the key takeaways you've learned today so they really lock into your memory. First, the F ratio is just a fraction. It compares the variance between groups, our signal, to the variance within groups, our noise. Second, we use ANOVA instead of running multiple t-tests to prevent our type 1 error rate from just spiraling completely out of control. Third, because variances are strictly positive numbers, a false null hypothesis will always push the F ratio to be greater than 1, making this always a right-tailed test. And lastly, ANOVA tables are basically the ultimate standard tool to logically organize your sums of squares, your degrees of freedom, and your mean squares to effortlessly find your F statistic.
So now you definitely know how to master the One-Way ANOVA. But what if your experiment has 2 factors? What if you were testing those 3 diet plans and you also want to test 3 different exercise routines at the exact same time to see how they interact with each other? How in the world does the table change to handle that?